Okay, so this video is about dry brush techniques and the value of dry brush work with your paintings and watercolor. First of all, you want to make sure you have a brush that it points up really into a nice sharp saber point. This is my number 2 Raphael Kalinsky sable, and then I have a Billy Scholl fine liner that's not a sable brush. It's a synthetic brush hair, but it works really nice for really, really tiny details. So to start out, you're going to want to dip your brush into clean water, tap it on a paper towel to remove a good amount of the water, and then I'm going to point it up in my palette of mixed color, and I'm going to test that color and see if that's what I wanted to work with. I've got quite a bit of water in this brush, so I am going to take it and tap it again and then go ahead and load it and test my line width. Oh, much better. Also, to cover more ground, I would say, in the painting, I'm going to open up the bristles on this brush just enough to create some really fine lines. When I'm brushing with those fine lines, it kind of helps to smooth out, or not kind of, it does, helps to smooth out some of the line work already on the painting. I can use the brush pointed, again, tap out a good amount of the water, point up and test the color on your palette. You can go in and stipple in places. Dry brush dries so quickly on the paper, which is really wonderful because you can go in and clean up marks, stipple into areas that you want to smooth out or has too much information as far as line work, and you want the painting to be a lot smoother. So dry brush is meant to restore areas, paint fine details in areas. So I'm going to add some more color into my highlight here. And let the water in the brush do some of the work to smooth out those lines. So if going in and adding a shade color, I'm just using small strokes. I'm just like in graphite or color pencil, I'm following the form with the strokes. That helps to build the illusion of the roundness of the cherry. And also by adding more water to your color, pointing up your brush. Again, test. You can smooth out rough areas with a little wider brush stroke. So it's really helping. Dry brush is really assisting you as the painter in applying shade colors, dark edges, texture, and just really controlling what is happening on the surface of your subject. And I've got some lines in here that I'm just going to stipple, dab, and move the bristles on the paper. Dab, dab, swipe. And adjusting the color with more water in your brush. I usually pull the paint out on my palette and add water to it so I have that watered down color, so I'm not over flooding my work with too dark of a color. Then I can go in and smooth out with color right on top. But in the meantime, I'm just really building, in this case, some shadow color, some form shadow. You just want to make sure you're not going in with the paint too wet, or you'll start lifting color away. So you can see here in this area that I'm working on, I'm lifting some color away to indicate a little bit of a reflected light edge. But I'm doing my best to make sure that those brush marks are feathered and I'm not lifting too much of the color away. And then I can go back over top of this cherry with analogous color, which is the red-orange, next to the quinacridone. And I can brighten up some of the duller areas. So my brush is definitely, I'm working wet on dry. It's nice that the paper is already dry in most areas so that I can go in and manage with some blending to brighten my colors. And just really make the information on the skin of this cherry really pop. Now the stem needs a little bit more work, so I've laid a glaze of the really light green and I've built up the shadow side of that green. Testing my brush, because I want to make sure that my colors are accurate. And then I'm, in essence, drawing with my brush. Since these colors are complementary colors, I can mix that green and the shade color of the cherry and start building up some shadows along this edge. That's also going to be the really nice brown color. In the papery bits of the stem here. And I'm just stippling right now. Just want to get some color in place. The stem is rather rough. And I'm just defining the edges with the point of the brush. From here, once it's dry, I can go back in, mix an even darker brown to work in that area. I need to add a little bit more. Add in this area. So you can really fine tune with the dry brush and draw in details. Clean up edges that perhaps are not as smooth as you wanted them to be. Add more information inside of highlights and just really build up the form. There's not very many subjects that are perfectly smooth in form. They do have some striations. That's really another wonderful technique using the dry brush is to help bring out that kind of information. Okay, making sure those highlight edges are nice and soft. They're not bright. This part of the cherry is not super bright. Once it's completely and completely dry, I can go in and erase any outline pencil marks so that they don't show up. So I was careful to work inside of those pencil lines until they're ready to be erased. So I'm using kind of a light flicking action, a snapping action with the tip of my brush, picking it up as quickly as I've laid it down onto the paper. Okay, so that gives you a real good idea of working with the dry brush point, splaying the point. Doesn't have to be splayed really wide unless you're working on a much larger area. I just gently pinch and open up those bristles, dip them in the paint, especially after I've tested the brush and then started building my strokes. Okay, I hope that really helps, and on to mixing washes.